Here in New York City, it's Friday, August 2nd, and this is Fox and Friends, and welcome, Kaylee. Good to have you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we start with this great news, and it is a Fox News alert. An emotional moment as Americans freed from Russia touched down on American soil, probably while you were sleeping, embracing their loved ones for the first time in a long time. We will show you more from those powerful moments and talk to General Jack Keane about what this prisoner swap means for the United States and Russia going forward.
Plus, today, the Secret Service will hold a press conference. I don't know, I can't believe it. On Donald Trump's assassination attempt, as a whistleblower makes a stunning accusation against their acting director.
Plus, it is a good day for some gospel music. We have Maverick City Music for our All-American Summer Concert Series. And the one and only Gronk will also join us live this morning.
He's always a party. So anyway, Fox and Friends for a Friday starts right now. And our lead story, and it's a great story, Fox News alert. Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, former Marine Paul Whelan, and journalist Alsu Kermasiva are back on American soil. They just touched down in San Antonio, Texas, for an evaluation at Brooke Army Medical Center after a very emotional reunion overnight with their families.
Wow, what a moment. Former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan was also met by family after touching down on U.S. soil for the first time in nearly 6 years. He spoke this morning after landing in Texas.
The FSB grabbed me, said I was a spy. I'm apparently a general in the Army, a secret agent for DIA. This is the nonsense narrative they came up with, and they wouldn't let it go. So, you know, this is how Putin runs his government. This is how Putin runs his country. Yeah, I'm glad I'm home. Yeah. I'm never going back there again.
Nope. Now Gershkovich, he was reunited with his family after spending nearly 500 days in the Russian prison system.
Not the show of support.
It's
Evan, it's over here.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
All right, President Biden and Vice President Harris were at Joint Base Andrews overnight to greet the Americans. Biden thanking allies who helped make this all possible.
This deal would not have been made possible without our allies. Germany, Poland, Slovenia, Norway, and Turkey, they all stepped up, and they stood with us. They stood with us. And they made bold and brave decisions. Released prisoners being held in their countries who are justifiably being held.
Yeah, I mean, how complex as this is, it's amazing how many countries had to be involved and many hostages are actually out. The main difference fundamentally is these people were taken against their will who've done absolutely nothing. Right. The others are criminals and killers, and that's where the Russians get back. So they're celebrating at this hour. Also important, I did not know the validity of the Alexei Navalny story, but evidently it was at the core of this, and when he was killed, the whole thing went into delay of game or fell apart. Right. So he could have been out as well if he didn't take, I guess it was a heart punch that took his life.
Well, the Wall Street, Evan, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, they have got an amazing story. It is a very long story, but it is very granular, and it tells everything that went into getting him out. And the headline is Inside the Secret Negotiations to Free Evan Gershkovich. The effort to bring him home, and it goes on and on. What's interesting about this, and you know, it tells a backstory where for a while, Russia so desperately wanted their hitman back. So as it was in 2022, Russia was offering Paul Whelan. We'll give you Paul Whelan back, but we want the Russian killer. And they said, we got to talk to Germany. They talk to Germany and they go, no, an ordinary American for a trained killer, we're not going to do that. Evan Gershkovich himself, 2 weeks before he was arrested, the CIA director was talking to his counterpart in Russia, and they said, look, Putin really wants to trade the killer for Whelan. And Evan was texting a colleague And he said, quote, they keep stupidly asking for him. The Germans obviously won't go for that. And if the Biden administration, this is between the two CIA, the top spies, if the Biden administration wouldn't exchange the killer for Whelan, then perhaps it was surmised by Evan and others, they would for a correspondent for a major newspaper. So you got the top guys, Russia and the United States, talking about Whelan and the killer. And they go, no, no, no. Essentially, Russia said, we need something more high profile. So they grabbed him.
Yeah, of course. And it's fascinating. I encourage everyone to read this. It's compelling, written in narrative form. And Vadim Krasikov, who you referenced,
the killer.
This is a hardened assassin.
Right.
He killed someone in broad daylight on a child's playground. And he was so confident of his release. He reportedly, according to this Wall Street Journal piece, told a guard, the Russian Federation will not let me rot in jail. And indeed, they did not. It's compelling to read about the moment. You see there, I believe that's Ella, Evan's mom.
Yeah.
You read about the moment she found out, down to the minute. It was 6:11 p.m. that she found out back on a September day that her son was in the hands of Vladimir Putin. And there you see her embracing Evan. And you, Steve, spoke with
Right.
Ella. Let's listen to that.
We would like the U.S. government to do whatever it takes to bring Evan home.
Right.
Evan is in Lefortovo prison, the prison that designed to isolate and break you down. Evan is in a very hard condition, and he's fighting very hard to stay mentally fit, to stay physically fit. And he wrote to me in the letter, every day it's like swimming against the stream.
Yeah.
It's takes a lot of effort. We embraced American trait of optimism. We're still very hopeful, and we are cheering on the U.S. government. Please concentrate. He deserves it.
The backstory on that is fascinating because evidently they were getting frustrated, not hearing anything from the Biden administration, and they basically decided they're going to go nuclear. They're going to go public. They're going to go on Fox and talk about their frustration 200 days into his captivity. They didn't feel there was an urgency there.
Indeed. In fact, the way they quote it in the Wall Street Journal is the mother wanted to throw a hand grenade, and so she memorized exactly what she wanted to say to the Biden administration. Get serious about this. And that's why she came on our show. All right, let's bring in somebody from the Wall Street Journal. Grania McCarthy is the chief digital editor and international colleague as well, joining us from London. Grania, this is a great day, not only for the country, but for your company, our company as well.
It's the best day. There's no better day. I walked into our building this morning and all of the window boxes downstairs say Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich is free. We all have been wearing these pins and buttons for these last 16 months. I stand with Evan. We obviously continue to stand with Evan, but it's the most exhilarating feeling. Once we knew yesterday, the very minute that we knew he was off the Russian plane, I mean, the newsroom here in London, of which Evan is a part of, erupted, and we've just been smiling ever since.
Grania, I can see the joy in your face, and that is echoed from here in the United States at News Corporation in this building. We feel it all around. It's palpable. I was interested in this Wall Street Journal piece that came out, that the Journal had been investigating these abductor states back to September of 2023, early 2023 rather, and it was Evan who said to the Journal, this is totally undercovered. So Evan was on top of this story before he became abducted by the Russian government himself.
Yeah, I mean, this is not surprising, really, if you think of who Evan is. And this is what the story we've been telling about Evan during this very difficult ordeal for him, is that he is a brilliant reporter and, a phenomenal correspondent in Russia, very, very steeped in the Russian language and the Russian culture. And grew up speaking Russian, but was writing very hard-hitting stories for us. And he also had covered the Brittany Griner case. He sort of knew the playbook that Vladimir Putin is using here. And probably we used to say in all of these long months that he was inside in prison, like he probably knew more than any of us really on maybe how this might ultimately play out, because he has reported so extensively on Russia.
He seemed to have a confidence about him every time we saw him in the glass cage. Every time we would look at him, he seemed as if he thought, all right, I know this game and I'm going to get out. Do you sense that he had a confidence that this thing would end this way?
we always found those moments, I kind of call it heartening and heartbreaking. It was always so good to see him in a way, but so hard to see him in those circumstances. But yeah, his character and his spirit and his determination continued to shine through. I mean, this was 16 months of his life that he was locked up in Vladimir Putin's Russia, and he continued to stay strong. He worked hard at it, but mentally strong, physically strong, and he provided a source of determination and inspiration for all of us to keep going. And I'm just getting kind of a little bit choked up looking at these images now, because his mother and his family, we've gotten to know them very well during this journey. We're part of a club that we never thought we would be part of and never wanted to be. But it has been an absolute privilege to be on that journey with them. And they have been just brave, courageous throughout this entire endeavor.
Grania, tell us something we don't know about what went into springing him.
I mean, I can't really talk about all of the details, but, you know, I think we became more optimistic, as sort of difficult as it is to put it this way. But when the sham trial last month suddenly sort of accelerated, we, you know, began to be a bit more optimistic. You know, we've stayed optimistic throughout this process because the pessimism was never an option. But, you know, but, you know, I think then a lot of rumors were circulating over the past couple of weeks. So we were optimistic, but really until we got that confirmation that he was off the plane, then we were able to truly breathe.
Because after the conviction, then they would have a resolution. That's how it typically goes, even though it was a sham conviction.
Exactly. I mean, this is something that the Russians have sort of articulated several times. Vladimir Putin himself has spoken about Evan on several occasions. But he actually did not mention that, you know, it had to go through some sort of legal resolution. But others have done that on the Russian side.
But Grania, how great is it that he said, "I'd like an interview with Vladimir Putin. I have a request." That was awesome.
It was.
It's just Evan. It speaks to him, and to see him walk off the plane there and sort of shooting the breeze with President Biden, and you know, walk over to a couple of the journalist friends, and he's began to speak about other political prisoners in Russia and that we should get them out. It's just, you know, it's just incredible, and the fact that he did that, and he apparently asked for an interview with President Putin in his final thing that he wrote before he left Russia. It just speaks to the true amazing journalist that he is.
Yeah, it takes a lot of guts.
It
Brian
does
McCarthy, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I think we got 8 Americans still there. I had no idea we had 8 Americans still there.
Yeah, it was a massive swap, but there are still a lot of people who are sitting on pins and needles. It's interesting. We ran a soundbite a little while ago where somebody said to Paul Whelan, "Well, you've been over there about 6 years," and he goes, "6 years? No, actually 5 years, 7 months, and 5 days." And he said that every day he was in custody, Paul Whelan, you know what he did? He sang the national anthem.
Wow. He's a patriot, a true patriot, former Marine.
And as soon as he got off the plane, Joe Biden took the flag pin off his lapel and put it on his shirt.
What a moment. And you've got to think the family of Mark Fogel sitting at home hoping they're next, along with the other 7 Americans.
No kidding. All right. Meanwhile, in other news, later today, Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe Jr. is holding a press conference at 2 o'clock this afternoon to update the public on the investigation into what went wrong in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th.
All right, it comes as we're learning about a whistleblower who claims that Rowe is to blame for the security lapse.
CB Cotton joins us from Butler, Pennsylvania. CB.
Hi, good morning, guys. There are new alarming allegations about what could have been done to prevent the assassination attempt here in Butler, Pennsylvania. As you mentioned, Republican Senator Josh Hawley says he's heard from a whistleblower, and this is very disturbing. The senator summarized this on X, writing, quote, "Whistleblower tells me Secret Service Acting Director Rowe personally directed cuts to the Secret Service agents who do threat assessments for events. Whistleblower says those agents were not present in Butler. We brought that allegation to the Secret Service, who told us, quote, we respect the senator and the role of oversight and will respond to the request through official channels. This is all eyes turn to today's news conference with the Secret Service to see whether we'll get more answers about the communication failures during the assassination attempt. One of them, when Acting Director Rowe testified before Congress earlier this week that there was a 30-second window between when a local officer first spotted the would-be assassin's gun and the first shots. The urgent warning was broadcast over the local law enforcement radio system, but Rowe testified that it never made it to the Secret Service agents directly protecting Trump. Today's news conference begins at 2 p.m. Eastern, and all of this comes as the medical examiner shares with local media the official cause of death for gunman Thomas Matthew Crooks. He ruled it as a single gunshot wound to the head. Back to you.
All right, Stevie, thank you very much.
Yep.
Well, we've got to hear more about. I wonder if they're going to ask him at the press conference about the whistleblower, because according to, and you can read this at Fox News Digital, the whistleblower says that the guy, the acting director, personally ordered something like a 20% cut to the counter-surveillance division. And the whistleblower said, and this is a great quote, if the counter-surveillance division did their normal operation, the shooter would have been handcuffed in the parking lot after he was spotted by the rangefinder, because the Secret Service doesn't stand for that, but they cut back stuff.
A lot of questions. Look, that cause of death, the shot to the head, I was told by a former senior law enforcement official, it went through the shooter's eye, out of his neck. An incredible shot by the counter sniper, given the line of visibility. But so many questions, to your point. A press conference today. Are you kidding me? 19 days late? There should have been a press conference every single day.
It's a Friday. It's a Friday in the summer. It's going to get lost.
It should be press conference number 20 today. Instead, it's press conference number 1. And that's what fuels conspiracy theories, when you don't give information to the American public. What a failure of crisis communications.
Yeah, well, see, they're going to try to either dispute the whistleblower or they're going to embrace it one way or another, because they're not going to talk to us. So the lawmakers have been bringing out the stories that they get. And then people out there are going, wait a second, there has to be another shooter. One was these other bullets came from different distances. I'm hearing all these stories nonstop. That would have happened if we were fully briefed, let alone what's happening now.
Yes.
Meanwhile, this just in, the Harris campaign has raised a whopping $310 million this month alone in July. This raises the presumptive Democratic nominee's cash on hand, because she got Joe Biden's to $377 million. So money won't be a problem.
Money not a problem, at least for the moment. And as the Veep stakes heats up, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, you're looking at him. He's canceling his weekend fundraising plans in the Hamptons. And there's speculation that this is a sign he may be tapped as Harris's running mate. She's expected to unveil her pick on Tuesday in Philadelphia.
That's right.
And now he's going to have a very free weekend.
And so is Andy Beshear. He also canceled a bunch of stuff. And former President Biden and vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance are holding a rally in Georgia tomorrow, just days after Harris held an event at exactly the same venue. So it'll be interesting to see. What's when you look at that gigantic pile of cash, $310 million, 2/3 of it came from first-time donors and 94% under $200. Which is extraordinary. And
the advantage for Harris coming up, the VP pick traditionally, this is something that's going to fuel donations in a positive news cycle. Then you got the DNC, which is going to fuel donations in a positive news cycle. And this is why I think Trump needs to come out and say, hey, I want to debate, and I want to debate now. Do not let her raise this money. Do not let her get these positive tailwinds. Come out, demand a debate, prosecute the case against Kamala Harris.
He said, Kaylee, as you know, he said yesterday, I'll do it, no problem.
But earlier than September.
You want it before September 10th.
Why not? Why are they doing this afternoon?
Right, exactly.
Right. Listen, he accepted last time right away in June, and it knocked out Joe Biden. So the team Harris is going to have momentum. They're going to have momentum with the VP. They're going to have momentum, we think, if the DNC comes out close to the RNC, despite the protests, tens of thousands of protesters there that threaten to overwhelm the whole thing. I think for the Trump team, they could use this opportunity to say, okay, this is a target-rich environment. How is we best to attack this? Is it to attack the law and order, attack the vice presidential days, the most liberal senator in the Senate the last days that she was there, the fact that she has reversed herself on 12 major policies. One thing I would stay away from, the whole gender, ethnicity, just don't even bring it up. It's not important. You have a Democrat that you want to beat. You had a different Democrat that you were focusing on. Now you have 90 days and a lot of money. Money won't be an issue. The court cases have been virtually pushed aside. So you have 90 days to run it like the British run it. It's a sprint, right? You just go, and nobody has more energy than President Trump. He's going to team with Vance over the weekend in Atlanta, And Vance yesterday at the border, sitting there with the unconstructed border wall. So I think it's an important thing. It's important for them to get ahead of things now.
Well, and to that point, Brian, you know, she has owned the news cycle for the last 3 weeks for the most part. And to Kayleigh's point, if they had something quickly to shake it up, it would be different, because she's going to name her vice president probably in the next 3 or 4 days tops. And then they're going to own the next week as well. And then it's the convention. So if the Trump team is trying to do something to break out, they better hurry.
And she, in so many words in that Atlanta rally, said, anytime, any place.
Right.
That's essentially what she said. But to Brian's point, do you remember that ad in the Kennedy era? Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Right.
I think the song that needs to play in the Trump campaign is policy, 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 policy. Every time you walk out the door, every time you hit a microphone,
100%.
prosecute the case against policy. She cannot win. She would be polling at 10% if
Right.
Americans knew her policies.
So all you have to do is say, you know how successful your policies are, because she's trying to adopt them.
Yes.
She's trying to run almost like a Republican. She's basically taken all his issues. It's mind-boggling, because I don't think anything's been quite done like this before.
It is shameless, and it's amazing that she's getting away with it.
She's getting away with it now.
She is so far. Let's see what happens. Meanwhile, back to our top story, and it's great news. Americans freed from Russia now in Texas, in San Antonio, for evaluation.
All right, General Jack Keane on what this means for our relationship with Russia going forward, and this little other issue called the Middle East. Reporter Evan Gerskovich, former Marine Paul Whelan, and another American journalist arriving back in the U.S. This happened hours ago. The biggest prisoner swap between the U.S. and Russia since the fall of the Soviet Union. President Biden addressing reporters on the tarmac.
The idea you're never going to be afraid. You'd never show up anywhere in the Middle East. You wouldn't show up anywhere in Russia. You wouldn't show up anywhere. It matters. It matters to be aware of what you're going into and not to take undue chances.
What is your message tonight to Vladimir Putin?
Stop.
Yeah, that'll go as well as don't. Retired four-star General, Fox News senior strategic analyst, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, we're thrilled everyone's back. We see how hard everyone worked. But sadly, this works for Russia. Their message is, we take some innocent people, we'll get some guilty people back.
Yeah, well, certainly we feel good about getting our people back for sure. Complicated deal, get them back. But look, this model isn't working. And we've got to recognize there's a new chapter being written right in front of us that even the previous administration was not dealing with. Whoever takes power here next year is going to deal with this reality. China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran are all working together undermining the United States. And they started a war in Europe and also in the Middle East, and they're threatening a war in the Indo-Pacific region. We could find ourselves at war in more than one place. And they're undermining the United States because they believe we're weak. They believe that we're not going to confront them. And this is just another tool in their elements of national power that they're using against us. They use misinformation to undermine the United States people's confidence in their government. This is a political weapon, taking hostages. They're not capturing spies and government officials here. They're taking Americans right off the street. And they're doing it because it's a weapon that they can use to undermine Americans' confidence in their government, because we look impotent when we have innocent civilians now being held hostage and we're sitting on our hands not being able to do anything about it. Well, this model that we're using doesn't work.
Right.
We have got to play hardball with them. They're playing hardball with us. We've got to step up our game immediately and start taking things away from them that they value. And this administration makes a big deal about working with allies. Well, let's get the allies involved. When China takes Canadian innocent civilians, let's get together with them to do something about it so that they can get together with us and other countries when it happens here in the United States. The model has failed. This is going to keep going on until we play hardball with these guys.
And remember the Iranians, they took our people, so we free up $6 billion out of South Korea, and we get them that. And we think that that wasn't a message that they want to go back to. So yesterday, they came out with the The defense strategy. They do every 4 years. They do a defense strategy to see where we're at. It's the commission that they put together, and they study it. And the conclusions are not good. It reveals the U.S. is not ready for a global war. The Pentagon has insufficient forces to face China and Russia. General, where do we go from here?
Well, I was on this congressional commission. It's done every 4 years to look at our defense strategy, and I was on the previous one as well. All I can tell you is, since the last one was done 5 years later, it's worse. And the reality is, when we just look at China, we used to have a decided advantage for decades over China in the Indo-Pacific region militarily. You get within 1,000 miles of the Chinese coast with United States military capability, and the advantage swings decisively to China. The United States still remains the world's #1 superpower militarily. But when we're dealing with a region like that, they have the advantage, and we are hard-pressed to catch up to this reality, particularly when our budgets are underwater year after year after year. And the degree that they work together is significant. China is financing the war that Putin is raging in Europe. Iran and North Korea are providing a significant amount of weapons to assist them. China is financing Iran's proxy war that is taking place in the Middle East, and Russia is helping them as well. This is a reality that we're dealing with, and we're not stepping up to see it for what it is. The danger and the threat is the most serious and the most dangerous, those of us on the commission feel, since World War II. Why? Because we could be directly involved in war in more than one theater at the same time.
And the problem
we've never
is,
faced anything like that since World War II.
And by the way, as you also point out, the U.S. industrial production in the industrial complex, famously, is grossly inadequate. So we are not ready to build massive amount of weapons. It's been our base, which everyone thought was going to take over the world, it has been shrunk. So it's hard for us to produce military hardware at the level we need. General, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, have a great weekend, guys.
All right. Meanwhile, coming up on One Nation, we'll be live at 9 o'clock on Saturday night. Amongst my great roster of guests, we'll evaluate the president's big speech, and he's with J.D. Vance in Atlanta, Tommy Lahren, Karl Rove, Congressman Michael Waltz. We'll also talk to the author of Amateur Hour, Kamala Harris in the White House, Charlie Spearing, find out what she's really like, and also have Tyler Hubbard. Sit down, walk around with him, former Florida-Georgia line. He's taller. It's going to be fun. Meanwhile, let's go over to Kaylee. Kaylee, you got the other breaking news.
Yes, I'll be watching that on Saturday night, Brian.
All right, great.
Well, turning now to our headlines. The illegal migrant accused of killing Georgia nursing student Laken Riley is due in court today for a status hearing. Jose Ibarra has pleaded not guilty to 10 charges, including murder. If convicted, he faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. 22-year-old Laken Riley was attacked and killed while out for a run on the UGA campus back in February. Today, the court will determine whether her suspected killer will take a plea deal or go to trial in the fall. Well, happening today, a new statue of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna will be unveiled outside of Lakers Arena in Los Angeles. Kobe, Gianna, and 7 others died in a helicopter crash in 2020. The first statue of Bryant debuted back in February, and a third statue will be reportedly unveiled sometime next season. And those are your headlines. Well, it's been 12 days since Vice President Kamala Harris became the presumptive Democratic nominee, but she hasn't taken questions from the press outside of 1 or 2 last night. But Trump only getting attacked when he does talk to the press. Well, it's been 12 days and counting, and Kamala Harris hasn't taken questions from the press or even sat down for an interview since emerging as the presumptive Democratic nominee. So when will she finally address the country? We're asking Fox News contributor and Outkick.com columnist Mary Catherine Ham. You know, Mary Catherine, she took a question last night, but I'm curious when the press will be clamoring for what is in their interest to have unscripted moments from Kamala Harris.
I'm not sure. And also, it's sort of hard to hear the question last night, but it sounded a little bit like, Madam Vice President, what do you think? right?
Yes.
That was the tough one she got. In the first access that they've really had an opportunity to shout something at her, I think this is a total dereliction of duty by the press. We are not sure in this moment, where the Middle East is on the verge of a large conflagration, where Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is getting plea deals. A lot of things are going on right now, and I'm not really sure who's doing the job. President Biden answered some questions last night. He also stood slack-jawed next to her while she answered the one she was given. And I think we can all say that this feels sort of like a power-sharing agreement of some kind about which the media has no curiosity at all. There's not one think piece about how we should be concerned about this. And look, if she wants to be the president of the United States, we should know where she stands on issues. She keeps issuing these statements from her staff that say she's completely reversed her decisions. The press, if they do not press her on these things, are allowing her to cosplay president with all the trappings of that job without the pressures of that job. And that is not fair to the American people, because they should have a full understanding of exactly what they're getting into. By the way, can I read like the extemporaneous bit she did last night? This is just an extraordinary testament to the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the power of diplomacy. The fact that in an easy setting, you have 5 seconds of extemporaneous thought and that's it, means she needs to be pressed.
So, Mary Catherine, I'm not holding my breath for the press to push for access. They won't. We need these unscripted moments. To your point, the American people deserve it. So how does the Trump campaign force her off script? I'm saying call for a debate sooner rather than later. Don't wait till September.